that the sun shines down its power to all the world and makes the wind blow strong as it will. I wonder how gentle rains can fall upon the land, so lovely earth can stay lovely still. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Energy Week with George Harvey. That's me and the amazing Tom Fennell.
In the flesh.
In the flesh. There's Tom. First thing I'm going to do, I'm going to do our commercial.
Why not?
Thing.
Get it over with.
Yeah, BCTV needs to get money from people because it's been personally attacked by Donald Trump.
All of the local community TV stations.
All of them need it.
Not just BCTV.
Yeah, but our studio is a BCTV studio.
Yes.
So in order to do Energy Week, we have to have
a studio.
A studio, yeah, absolutely. And so we're asking for donations just to keep this show going. And what you could do is go to BrattleBoroTV.org and click on the support local television thing at the bottom of the page. And when you make a donation, please say that it's supporting Energy Week, so it'll be credited to us.
So it'll be credited properly. Yeah.
But we're not quite there on our fundraising for the show, but we're going to continue even when we are there to keep fundraising going for BCTV, because BCTV needs the funding. And the other thing that I want to say, the Brattleboro Select Board has had a declaration that we're in a climate emergency brought to them.
And they've turned it down.
And they've turned it down. Now, their reasons for turning it down may be valid. I don't know. I don't want to judge them for that, but I want to point out the climate emergency is a very real thing, and it does. All right, let me back up a bit. The IPCC report that came out almost a year ago said we had until 2030 to reduce 45% of our emissions, or we would not be able to stop climate change at 1.5 degrees Celsius, right?
Doesn't sound good.
Doesn't sound good. Now, we've already done about 1 degree Celsius and a little less, and basically what that means is the city of Houston has had 2 1,000-year floods in a 2-year period. There have been 5 500-year floods in southeastern Texas in 5 years.
Happen.
It's not supposed to happen. The Gulf Stream has slowed down by 15%. The melt of the Greenland ice has gone as far as scientists expected it to go only 5 years ago, by 2070. I mean, the situation is getting worse. And, you know, I went through this thing a couple of years ago where I tracked flood insurance premiums, and I based on inflation and increase in the population, the increase in land value relative to the dollar, and so forth. I figured that the premiums should have gone up between 1977 and 2015 by a factor of 5.5. They should have been 5.5 times as high as they had been. They didn't. They went up by a factor of 47.
Wow.
And what has happened since then, since Donald Trump became president, that particular department of the federal government has overspent its budget by $22 billion supporting flood insurance. That's going to have to be made up from somewhere. It's supposed to be made up from premiums, but the premiums
aren't there.
The premiums are not being raised to cover that. Basically, what I'm saying is we're in trouble. Scientists have been saying, if you think about addressing this in 2 parts, we have to change the laws, and then we have the changes work out in the field. So you do one and then you do the other.
We're going to stop burning things.
Yeah, scientists are saying it's going to take about 9 or 10 years once the laws are changed to get the work done to get to that. So basically, we've got until maybe the middle of next year to
change
change the laws. With Donald Trump in office, with the Republicans in control of the Senate.
And he's saying it's a hoax.
And he's saying it's a hoax. He wants to go the other way. We've got a problem.
Oh, boy.
We've got a problem. And now the scientists are saying, well, if we don't deal with this, our civilization could collapse by 2050.
As we know it. So we're back to the caveman days.
We are in trouble.
You got a club?
Huh? Got a club. All right. There's two ways we can approach this.
Yeah.
We can approach it by letting the federal government do it. Which
if they
means,
will.
Well, they're going to have to at some point. There's going to have to be, the climate is changing. There's no question about that. Some president is going to have to say, yes, we're going to deal with this now. And the longer we put it off, the more pain there is in that statement. The more disruptive it's going to be. We may be in a situation where we have to deal with this the way the United States dealt with the Second World War, where the federal government went to the auto industry and said, you can't sell cars anymore. I don't think people would like that, to be told you can't buy a car. In those days, 3 gallons of gasoline per week was the rationed amount.
3?
3. So if you've got a car...
That's just enough to conform to alternate side of the street parking.
Yeah. Well, if you have a car that burns a gallon in 20 miles, that means you would have a range for the full week of 60 miles, which means those low-range electric vehicles look pretty attractive. Basically, we have a choice of allowing the federal government to do really disruptive work addressing this problem, because the problem is too disruptive. I mean, 2,000-year floods in 2 years means anybody who has filed flood insurance on both occasions can't get insurance anymore on your house. That means you may lose your mortgage. I mean, this is serious. There's another possibility, and that is if everybody who is concerned about climate change said, I'm going to restrict my purchases of fossil fuels as much as I possibly can.
Not likely.
Well, if they did it, just the people who are concerned, it would be a matter of not very many months before the oil industry would be saying, yes, I think we better do something about climate change. Because they've got their backs against the wall now.
And they've known about it for a long, long time.
Well, that's another thing. Who was the first president whose advisors said to him, Mr. President, we got a problem. Carbon emissions are causing climate change.
I think it was Truman.
The earliest one I've been able to find was Johnson. That was on the 5th of November, 1965. And on the 8th of June, 1968, his science advisor went to the Edison Electric Institute and said, we are facing a situation of CO2 emissions causing climate change, and it's going to be catastrophic if we don't deal with it. And the federal government has been kicking this can down the road ever since, with the exception of Barack Obama. Well, if you don't like Barack Obama, now you've got a reason to like him. He was the only person who did anything about it. And I want to tell you, I voted for Nixon, I voted for Ford, I voted for Reagan, basically Republican straight down the line. But these people who are in Washington today are not Republicans, and they are not conservatives, and I've had my say. Sorry about that. Okay, you want to start dealing with our issues here?
Well, I wish I had a good rant to follow yours.
Well, I'm just saying, I think if people start doing this on their own, we won't have to have disruption a couple of years from now.
Not likely.
Well, people are doing it on their own.
Some of them are.
Yes. And now I've lost my little thing here.
Well, we'll start right off from the beginning, so it's easy to find it. Got a picture coming up.
We have a picture coming up.
Is...
Oh, sorry about that. The picture is that.
Put the picture up.
And what I've got to do is it's going to take
Good to start the show off with a nice picture. That's Rose Rock Solar in Texas.
Rose Rock Solar in Texas.
And that's 2 square miles. That's a big,
This is a big array.
Array.
And I'm still getting this thing together because it wasn't together when I started the show. And there it is.
Well, we'll look at the Texas array for a while.
Let's look at the Texas array. It'll just take me
That's
a second.
200
There we go.
megawatts, by the way. That's
So
nothing
you've
to
got
sneeze
a
at.
you've got a title for this?
Yes, I do. U.S. utility-scale solar pipeline tops 37.9 gigawatts. That's the pipeline. That's what's in process of being built.
The U.S. solar industry now boasts the largest pipeline of utility-scale solar projects in history, with a record 37.9 gigawatts of contracted solar, according to the latest figures. In the U.S. Solar Market Insight Report from Wood Mackenzie Power and Renewables and the Sun Solar Energy Industries Association.
I'm going to bring the picture up again.
Yeah, I'll do that.
I can, yeah.
That amount, 37.9 gigawatts, I'm going to guess is probably about, it's the equivalent of 5 small nuclear power plants, at
All right,
least.
I'll go for that.
Maybe more. But there's, this is a lot of energy that's being put online.
Well, right now, according to this article, solar is the lowest cost option for utilities, corporations, and families.
We've seen that.
It's coming.
Yeah.
It's coming, boys.
Now, we're going to have to kind of move because of my rant, and I'm sorry about that. That item, by the way, is from Clean Technica. This appeared on September 19th, and the way you get to it is go to my blog, geoharvey.com, geoharvey.com, and click on the calendar, September 19th, and you'll find that story, and the next one, and the one after. What's the next one, Tom?
California vows to fight Trump administration to keep higher car emission standards.
There you go. Sacramento has vowed to fight Washington's attempt to remove the state's higher car emissions.
This is
Quote,
crazy.
It's about the oil industry, period, full stop. It's not about the car manufacturers. It's not about our economy, end quote, Governor Gavin Newsom said. And we're gonna get back to this.
We will be touching base on it. There's a nice 3-minute video in this particular one. It's worth looking at.
We're looking at. I want to talk about this at greater length when we get to that. But that particular item came from KGO-TV.
Wherever that is.
Wherever that
on the
is.
West Coast with a K in it. But
I didn't know that was related to locations.
about 95%. There's
Really?
a few exceptions. Yeah.
Wow. There you
W's
go.
and K's.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got a picture of Greta. And I want to point
That
out...
looks like her.
Yeah, it does. I want to point out neither Tom nor I has a crush on Greta. That's not why we're putting her up. The reason we're putting her up is because she's in the news a lot.
Well, we got, later on in the program, you'll see a very angry picture.
A very different picture than
And
this one.
if you listen, if you click on the article,
Yeah.
you can hear her talking, and she is mad. She's
Oh
angry.
boy. Oh boy. And that rant that she went through makes mine look like a love song,
Well, let's move along here.
Okay, this
California. Well, we did
is
California.
we did California.
Yeah.
Greta Thunberg. Go ahead.
Greta I'll call her Thunberg.
Okay.
Greta Thunberg has a suggestion for Congress on how to take real action on a climate crisis.
16-year-old Greta Thunberg appeared in front of the Congress before a hearing on climate change just days after she met former President Barack Obama. She said, quote, "I don't want you to listen to me. I want you to listen to the scientists," end quote. This is from CNN.
Well, there's a nice video on this article,
Yes.
on this website.
Yes.
And she's basically saying, don't listen to the scientists. Don't listen to me.
Yeah.
Listen to the scientists.
And she had a thing there where she said, I don't have a prepared statement. I'm going to give you the IPCC report.
Yeah, that's exactly what she said. Well, we'll be talking about her several times before we leave you today.
Yeah.
Well, this is just what she said, just what you said. She doesn't have any prepared remarks.
Yeah.
Instead, she referred to the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change's special report.
And how many of the people who were listening do you suppose actually went out and read it after she said that? That's not a trivial
Well, this is a
report.
quote from what she said. "I want you to unite behind the science, and then I want you to take real action."
Yes.
And by the way, later on we'll be talking about her again, and you'll get a chance to see her.
Yes.
She's angry. She is
angry,
really,
absolutely.
this is a different Thunberg.
Okay, we're up to Friday, September 20th, and we have an item from The Guardian.
U.S. to stage the largest ever climate strike. Now, this has happened before they staged it, because they've staged it already.
Oh, yeah, they have indeed.
Okay. Somebody must sound the alarm.
Climate strikes will take place all over. I'm sorry. Climate strikes will take place in more than 1,000 locations in the U.S. on Friday.
That was last Friday.
Last Friday. It's already happened, with major rallies in New York, Washington, D.C., Boston, Chicago, San Francisco, Miami, and Brattleboro. Globally, more than 4,500 strikes are planned across 150 countries.
Well, there's a takeaway from the article here. When your house is on fire, somebody needs to sound the alarm.
That's right.
There's a joint statement by the mayors of New York, Paris, and Los Angeles.
Right. And by the way, there was a climate strike in Brattleboro, and there were.
Yeah, I was there.
I've been told that there were about 1,000 people there.
Well, certainly there was several hundred. I couldn't tell you there was 1,000, but we met at Plenty Park and walked up to the Commons.
I was at Plenty Park. Unfortunately, I wasn't feeling very good, so I went home. But at the time I left, I would guess there were 300 people there.
Oh, easily, yeah.
And then there were about 200 people I could see approaching the park at that time.
Well,
so,
a bunch of them gathered at the food co-op and marched up Main Street.
Yes, they did. That's right.
And then they gathered around Plenty Park for a while, and eventually everybody moved up to the Common.
Okay. Now we've got
another
item here. It's already up. You don't have to click on it.
Bingo.
These are disused cooling towers at 3 Mile Island. Those were the cooling towers that were there for the unit there that melted down back in the 1970s.
Yeah, so this is what it's saying. 3 Mile Island is closing.
Yeah, this is on CNN. It did close. The famous 3 Mile Island nuclear plant is officially shutting down on September 20th. A plant spokesman confirmed to CNN. Exelon Generation announced in May that it would officially close the plant by September 30th, citing a lack of state action in subsidizing clean energy. Citing a lack in state action. That's a different way of saying, by the way, we're losing money.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what's going on. From the article, the plant had not been profitable for 5 years.
Yeah, so why run it?
It will take decades for the plant to be completely cleaned up and will cost around $1.2 billion.
So you're going to put $1.2 billion. What they have to do is they have to take the account that they've been putting money into that is there for
exactly this purpose.
And they have to bank on the idea that that account is going to increase in value through whatever economic downturns might happen in the meantime. And, it reminds me...
Well, this could be a long time, because they're estimating it could take up to 60 years before they remove all the radioactive waste.
Yeah, and it reminds me of a headline that I saw when I was in college a long time ago. And it said that I think it was DuPont fortune. The DuPont family had built up a huge trust to make sure that nobody in their family would ever be poor.
Okay.
And so they decided they were finally going to break that up and give the money to everybody in the family. And they just gave an equal share to everybody in the family. And it
was a significant share.
And it came out to $1,700.
Is that all?
Yeah, because of the basically it was beat by the Depression. That was set up before the Depression started. Well, it could have been destroyed completely in the Depression. It wasn't, and so there it was. Anyway, should we move on?
Yeah, we got an interesting one coming up here.
This is the one about Ørsted. Okay.
Ørsted to pioneer deployment of GE's next generation offshore wind turbines.
This is from Intercom Inc. Subject to required approvals and final contract signing, Ørsted will deploy Haliade X 12-megawatt wind turbines.
They're big.
They're big. Are huge. On the 2 offshore wind farms in Ørsted's Mid-Atlantic cluster.
That's our
Mid-Atlantic. This is
the coastline, basically.
Our coastline.
Well, Virginia, North Carolina.
They would put 120 megawatts off the coast of Maryland and 1,100 megawatts off the coast of New Jersey.
There's 110 turbines they're talking about.
Yes, and these things are utterly gigantic. I mean, the nacelles, if you took the nacelle and plopped it on somebody's yard, and then somebody went by
the house would be going.
Cut windows out of it and put a door in, it'd be 2 stories tall.
Well, the older wind turbines, the nacelle is big enough to hold about 4 buses. This one will handle about 6 or 8.
Yeah.
These things are huge.
These are huge. Okay, we are.
They're going to put 110 turbines in, by the way.
Yeah.
And the Heliod, this Heliod that we're talking about, biggest turbine in the world. It's about half again as big as anything else anybody's making.
Only one of them has ever been put up, and that was a test turbine.
Test turbine, yeah. But they're making them.
They're making them, absolutely.
It's got a rotor diameter of 700 feet. Each blade is 350 feet, half
which
of that
means
700.
Each blade is longer than a football field with its end zones.
Yep. It's sweeping a total area of 400,000 square feet. And 7 eastern states have committed to building a total of 20 gigawatts of offshore wind capacity by 2035.
This is big news.
They're getting serious.
Yeah, they're getting serious.
It's about time.
Okay, we're up to Saturday, September 21st, and we have a picture of flooding.
And that picture is
following,
here, and that picture is here.
Imelda was not a hurricane. Imelda was a tropical storm for 6.5 hours.
Yeah,
as it approached,
it hadn't become a hurricane yet.
It had never never did become a hurricane. It was
it just rained a lot.
When it got to Houston, it was just a tropical depression. It wasn't even a tropical storm anymore.
But it was a wet one.
Oh, was it wet? Okay. This is from the Texas Observer.
Yeah, it is that. Tropical storm Imelda will likely be, it says.
Southeast.
Oh, okay. I got to read the whole damn thing.
Okay.
Tropical storm Imelda will likely be southeast Texas's 5th 500-year flood in 5 years.
You got that, gang? This is the 5th 500-year flood in 5 years.
You're supposed to have one 500-year flood in 500 years.
That's right. Tropical storm Imelda was incredible. Though it might be too soon to tell how climate change shaped the intensity and speed with which Imelda struck Texas, Imelda will likely be southeast Texas' 5th 500-year flood event in as many years. And by the way, it has been Houston's second 1,000-year flood. Second 1,000-year flood in 2 years.
Some parts of the Houston-Galveston area recorded more than 40 inches of rain.
Right.
2 years ago, Harvey dropped 50 inches of rain.
I mean, and what's happening here is the warmer water is allowing more water to evaporate from the Gulf of Mexico or wherever. That air above is warmer, so it'll hold more water.
Yep.
And then on top of this, the storms are starting to stall. And this is what happened in Imelda, which was a tropical depression.
And it happened real quick.
It happened really fast. They didn't know this was going to be coming. They knew that they were going to get rain.
They weren't ready for it.
They were not ready for this. And I want to point out also, there are people in that area who have been flooded year after year. If you own a house and you have flood insurance, that flood insurance is guaranteed by the federal government. That's what I was talking about earlier. But the federal government only insures houses that have had no more than 2 claims in a 10-year period.
So after that,
there are people in the Houston area who have got to choose. Are they going to file an insurance claim because they've already filed one, or are they not? And the reason is because if they file that insurance claim, they can't have insurance. If they can't have insurance, the banks are going to say, we want that mortgage paid now. They're probably not going to be able to do that, and so
they're going to foreclose.
They're going to have to move out.
Yeah.
That's
the way it works.
That's the way it works. And there are hundreds of thousands of people who are affected by this storm, and it remains to be seen what's going to happen to land values in the Houston area? Because they could go.
If everybody's getting foreclosed on, the land value is going to drop, going to plummet.
You can't sell these
You can't
houses.
sell it because you can't use it.
Yeah.
You can grow trees on it, that's about it.
A friend of mine was told me about driving along the coast of Florida, and the person who was driving the car said, "You see all those mansions over there? Nobody lives in them.
No kidding.
And the reason why nobody lives in them is because they can't get in flood insurance."
Wow.
So you got mansions, no flood insurance.
Well, from the article here,
Yeah.
there is little room to doubt that the very fossil fuel companies that built this region's wealth, we're talking about Houston now,
Yes.
polluted floodwaters and refused to shut down operations in the face of a storm until the last possible moment, are also making storms like Imelda stronger and more frequent.
Yes.
Something's got to change.
Something has to change.
It does.
It does. There's no question about it. Okay.
Well, we got another one coming up.
We
here.
have one here from Modern Diplomacy.
After stalling last year, renewable power capacity additions to hit double-digit growth in 2019.
After stalling last year, global capacity additions of renewable power are set to bounce back with double-digit growth in 2019.
Didn't I just say that?
I think you did. driven by solar PV's strong performance, according to the International Energy Agency. PVs are being put on all over the world like crazy, but also wind turbines are going in, and people are just looking for whatever they can do here.
Well, yeah, let's get a sentence from the article.
Do that.
Renewable capacity additions need to grow by more than 300 gigawatts globally each year between 2018 and 2030 to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement.
That's just to reach the goals of the Paris Agreement, which between you and me and anybody out there
moderate.
watching, those are moderate goals. Yeah. Those are probably not going to be sufficient for what we want to do. Okay.
Well, we got our girlfriend up here again.
We have our girlfriend up. There she is.
And I'll pull her up
And
there.
I think the woman standing behind her might be her mother.
Uh-huh.
Her mother has, that kind of blonde hair. Her mother is an opera singer, by the way, and is well known in opera groups. She's not, if she had been a pop singer, I think
You probably know her.
Greta would probably have grown up rich. Her father was an actor, but her father has basically given up most of his career to manage her mother's career and her. Mm-hmm. So, I've heard, somebody recently was saying, well, she's a child of privilege. I don't think I'd call her a child of privilege.
I don't think so,
No.
Well, from the article, climate protests, marches worldwide against global warming.
We're back to the protests again. This is from the BBC, and of course this was written after the protests started. Millions of people around the world held a global climate strike on Friday, inspired by activist Greta Thunberg. Protesters across continents waved placards and chanted slogans in what could be the biggest ever demonstration over global warming caused by humans.
Well, this is from the BBC.
Yeah.
And if you want to go to the website, there's some nice videos on it.
Yes.
And I'll give you a quick how it starts off. Pacific Island nations like Kiribati, the Solomon Islands, and Vanuatu, all threatened by rising sea levels, kicked off the strike.
Yes.
Okay, from there, demonstrations spread to cities in Asia, Europe, Africa, and the Americas, including Brattleboro.
Including Brattleboro. Isn't that amazing?
Greta said about 4 million people took part in the strike around the world, and we're still counting.
I have read that
This is an emergency.
This is an emergency.
Now, this is a quote from Greta.
Yeah.
Our house is on fire, and it's not just a young people's house. We all live here.
That's
it
right.
affects all of us.
That's right.
This is only the beginning.
That's right.
Climate change is coming whether they like it or not.
Yes, there are people who are my age. I'm 73. There are people my age who are going to be severely challenged by this in the United States. I have absolutely no doubt about this. Okay? All right, that was the last item for September 21st, which was Saturday.
We're shifting gears here.
And our next item is from September 22nd, Sunday, and it is from the Market Oracle.
This is a very long article. How Russia seized control of the uranium market.
Mines in Canada and elsewhere which have supplied uranium for nuclear fuel have been closing as Russia and Kazakhstan put pressure on the market. The U.S. imports 93% of its nuclear reactor fuel. And much
That's
of that,
interesting. 93%.
93%.
Wow.
And much of this is from Russia. But Donald Trump says it's not a problem.
Well, maybe it isn't.
You know, it strikes me as mind-boggling that Donald Trump would see this as not a problem, and yet he wants to make sure that the United States produces more oil than it uses as a matter of security.
Yeah.
It is mind-boggling. Why? Well, Kazakhstan is hanging along there with Russia, but Donald Trump is, I think, maybe hanging along there with Russia too.
He might very well be.
Yeah.
Well, from the article, mines are closing in response to low uranium prices. An estimated 35% of the uranium supply has disappeared. The accidents at 3 Mile Island and Chernobyl caused utilities to become wary of the time and cost needed to build and permit nuclear plants,
Yeah,
which we've talked about.
Absolutely.
That led to fewer of them being built, depressing demand for uranium.
Yes.
This is really complicated.
Well, it is, except that it paints an overall picture which is not all that complicated.
Well, there's more going on.
Yeah.
The advent of fracking slashed the cost of natural gas production.
Yes.
Okay? Utilities flock to the cheaper fuel at the expense of less competitive nuclear power. And Trump does not think cheap uranium imports impair national security.
What can you say?
You can't say much.
I mean, this is totally illogical. We have another picture here, and it's already up, Tom.
Yeah, it is. Isn't it?
It's there.
This could have gone to the one we just talked about, but it goes to the next one.
Yes, that's right. This is from Deutsche Welle, and it's about coal. That's a coal mine.
I hadn't figured it out. It's mines with turbines in the background, and it's a coal mine.
It is a coal mine.
And Germany to join alliance to phase out coal.
In the wake of the global student climate strike, Environment Minister Svenja Schulze, I can't pronounce German anymore, said Germany would move further in its efforts to phase out coal. Berlin is hoping to shut down all of its coal-fired power plants by 2038. The country will be joining the Power Past Coal Alliance.
And that's from Deutsche Welle, which is a pretty good quality radio station, worldwide shortwave station.
Is it?
Yeah,
well,
I used to listen to it when
also.
I was living in Saudi Arabia.
It's a magazine also.
It probably is now.
I know it as a magazine.
Yeah, well, it was a radio station. I'm sure it still is. Sort of like the Voice of America, but a little bit more truthful.
Yeah, a little bit more truth.
Yeah.
Okay.
I said truthful, but it doesn't matter. Yeah.
Okay.
There's a video here that's 2 minutes long that's worth watching.
Well, that's good to know.
Okay, the coal exit is a central pillar of global climate production.
Protection. Yeah.
Germany is officially, quotes, committed to ending its dependency on coal. The PPCA, that's the Powering Past Coal Alliance, okay?
Yes.
The PPCA, founded in 2017, is comprised of 30 national governments whose objective is to halt new construction of coal plants, okay, and international funding for coal, and adhere to the Paris Climate Accords. Mm-hmm. So things are happening, guys.
Okay. We're still on Sunday, September 22nd, and we have an item from the National Memo.
The Trump administration suppressed over 1,500 climate change studies. They wouldn't do a thing like that.
And there's a funny little thing going on with numbers here that I was not able to figure out. So I'm just going to read it the way it was in the article. The Trump administration systematically suppressed and minimized the results of more than 1,400 studies related to climate change at the Department of Agriculture. Information released by Senator Debbie Stabenow, Democrat from Michigan, shows farmers are not getting the facts they need. Now, the reason I said the thing about numbers is that the title says 1,500. The article says 1,400, and I don't. I looked.
I wouldn't argue that.
Yeah, I would look to find out, but 1,400 is bad enough, regardless of which number is correct.
Well, there's a little bit of a takeaway from the article. The facts show that climate change is likely to drive down yields for some crops,
Yes.
harm milk production,
Yeah.
and lead to a drop in nutrient density for key crops like rice and wheat.
Yes.
But nobody knows that.
Well, a lot of farmers are getting the picture.
Well, they're not getting it from Trump.
They're not getting it from Trump. But
Attacking climate research and hiding it has been one front in a wide-scale war on science under this administration.
Yes, and I have to say, Tom, it didn't start with his administration.
No, it didn't.
It started a long time ago. I mentioned earlier that I voted pretty much straight Republican. Well, I stopped because I figured out in 2003 that the Republicans who were in control of these departments in Washington were suppressing climate information. And it was obvious to me that that was the case. And, you know, if you look at agriculture in Vermont, the farmers at that time were already complaining about how it just went from one bad maple syrup year to another.
Yeah.
You know, and
maple syrup's been migrating northward.
It's been migrating northward, and we've had the I refer to this often. The deer ticks have come into the state carrying Lyme disease with them. We've got new kinds of trees growing. I don't think I'd ever heard of a pawpaw tree growing in this area now, but they're growing on Elliott Street. You know, we're getting into crazy weather, and things are changing. And if the farmers don't update to deal with the crops that they've got, they can't produce what they're supposed to produce. But
well, let's move along here. We got another picture coming
we are up to Monday, September 23rd, and we have a picture of an offshore wind farm, and it doesn't have a caption because I couldn't find who produced that picture.
It's an interesting picture, though. See that little thing sticking up in the middle?
Yeah.
That's a 5-story building. That's where the crew lives, among other things.
Is this the one where there was a video with it that showed a guy talking about living on that thing, and there were 100 people living on it?
I don't remember seeing that.
No, there was one that we did, and I think it might have been this one, where that's what this guy was saying. This is an interesting place to live. You have 100 people living here.
It's a hotel.
It's a hotel. That's what he called it.
Renewable energy projects approved. And this is a wind farm, of course.
Yes. And this is from a publication called Construction Enquirer. The UK approved electricity supply deals for a dozen major renewable energy projects, including the world's largest wind farm, the £9 billion Digger Bank project off the Yorkshire coast. That's over $10 billion. The project will provide 6 gigawatts of electricity, enough to power 7 million homes.
Well, this Dogger Bank, we never hear much about it, but it's a large sandbank.
Huge.
In the shallow area of the North Sea, about 60 miles off the east coast of England.
Yeah.
And because it's shallow, it's ideal for turbines, and they're taking advantage of that.
They're taking advantage of it.
There's more than 600 turbines planned, standing 600 feet high. Enough electricity to power 4 million homes. So they're not playing around.
They're not playing around with this one. Our next item comes from The Guardian.
It does that. Countries must triple climate emission to cut targets to global heating to 2 degrees centigrade. That's not 1.5, that's 2.
That's 2.
Wow.
An assessment backed by the world's major climate science bodies has found commitments to cut greenhouse gas emissions must be at least tripled and increased up to 5-fold if the world is to meet the goals of the 2015 Paris Climate Agreement, which were not 1.5 degrees, they were 2 or less. But this is saying we have to do a whole lot better or we're in deep trouble.
There's a good video on his site, about 2 minutes, and it talks about the climate strike traveling around the world. It's interesting.
Right.
Climate is changing faster than forecast, and current plans would lead to catastrophic global temperature rise.
Yeah.
Okay, we're not doing enough.
We're not doing enough.
Global emissions are not likely to peak before 2030 on a current trajectory. And
Okay.
they got to peak.
Yep.
They've got to peak.
They've got to peak soon. We've got an item here
Got a
from the
picture coming.
BBC, and there's a picture of a boat.
Looks like a boat. Looks like a boat to me.
It is a boat. Did I tell you that I finally figured out what the difference between a boat and a ship is?
A ship is bigger than a boat.
Well, we know that, but you know,
You can put a boat on board a ship.
you can put a boat on board a ship. That's right. Ships carry boats on them for
It looks like a
various
tugboat.
purposes. It looks a little like a tugboat, but it's got an awful lot of windows in the back.
Yeah, it does.
Okay, you want to read that? The
Yeah,
title?
climate change, quote, or colon, I mean, impacts accelerating as leaders gather for UN talks.
This is from the
This is just before last Monday's talk.
Yes, this is from the BBC. The signs and impacts of global heating are speeding up. The latest science on climate change, published ahead of key UN talks in New York, says, sorry about the way I read that sentence, the data compiled by World Meteorological Organization says the 5-year period of 2014 to 2019 is the warmest on record.
This is interesting. There's 3 good videos attached to this.
Yes.
thing. First one is the effects a warming would have on 2019's extreme weather.
Yes.
The second one, millions of people join the environmental strike led by school children.
Yes.
I think that's the same one that we talked about in the previous ad. And there's another 3-minute video, and this one's well worth seeing, capturing mankind's impact on planet Earth.
Yeah.
This is an important video.
Yes.
If you look at anything we're talking about, this is the one I think you should look at today.
Okay. We are up to Tuesday, September
Tuesday already.
24th, and this is an item from the Associated Press.
23 states sue Trump to keep California's auto emission rules. This is a fight.
Yeah,
Fight's
this is a
going on.
fight, and it's an interesting one for a couple of reasons. By the way, it's no longer 23 states. At least one other state has joined them. So it's
And
at
3
least-
large cities.
It's at least 24 states. California sued Friday to stop Trump administration from revoking its authority to set greenhouse gas emissions and fuel economy standards for trucks and cars, and enlisting help from 22 other states in a battle that will shape a key component of the nation's climate policy. And this is something that car producers are supporting.
Well, we talked about that exact
Yeah.
thing and why, because they want to know where they're heading.
Yeah,
They got a plan.
And frankly, I think that they're looking at this and saying, you know what? We don't want to hit 2021 with a new president who comes down hard on us.
Yeah.
We want to go into 2021 knowing where the market is moving.
A little background here. Federal law sets a standard for how much pollution can come from cars and trucks.
Right.
Okay. And since the 70s, California has been permitted to set tougher rules because it has the most cars and struggles to meet air quality standards. So
Right.
they got a waiver.
Yeah.
Okay. On Thursday, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration withdrew California's waiver. Okay. And California said, can't do that.
Yeah.
Okay? They say the rules were making cars more expensive and impeding safety. This is what the Highway Traffic Safety Administration says. They're making the cars more expensive and impeding safety because consumers are being priced out of newer, safer vehicles.
And
that's double speak. That's
Consumer
gobbledygook.
Consumer Reports
Yeah.
did a study on that and came to the conclusion that the lower emission standards, switching to them, would cost the average car buyer about $3,300 because they use more fuel.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I was wondering there.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on. We got another picture.
We have
of
another
a
picture
rather
of Greta.
Angry
A rather angry Greta.
Greta.
And
Let's
you know,
pull it up here
if you
Come on, you.
yeah, do it, Tom. If you want to see anything this week,
She looks mad, and when you hear her, she is mad.
she is very angry. And who is she angry at? She's angry at the world leaders gathered at the UN, and she did not pull any punches
Not at all.
at all. The only thing that I could say she could have done and didn't do was swear at him.
Well, this is what it says.
Yeah.
Angry Greta Thunberg tells global leaders she will never forgive them for failing on climate change.
Now, you know, that headline made me mad because that isn't what she said. She said she would never forgive them if they chose not to act on climate change, which is a different sort of thing.
It's a different, it's a different timeline.
It's a different thing. She's saying, if you decide that you're going to do nothing about this, we're not going to forgive you. And I think that's a reasonable thing to say.
Well, I got some quotes. I got some quotes of hers. So
yeah, okay. Let me read this, and then you can tell us all about it. Greta Thunberg doesn't mince words. Quote, "We are in the beginning of a mass extinction, and all you can talk about is money and fairy tales of eternal economic growth," end quote. The Swedish climate activist told the UN General Assembly, "How dare you?"
She does,
and
you can hear her on that website.
I tried to intone that properly. I didn't do it as well as she did.
She's mad. She's angry.
Mad.
She's really
She is mad.
These are a bunch of quotes of hers. She didn't say them all at once, but I'm running them together.
Yeah, do it, Tom.
"You have stolen my dreams and my childhood with your empty words, and yet I'm one of the lucky ones. People are suffering. People are dying. For more than 30 years, the science has been crystal clear. How dare you continue to look away? Adults keep saying we owe it to the young people to give them hope. I don't want your hope. I want you to panic." Her speech was met with stunned silence, then an overwhelming applause.
Well, there was applause that came up during the course of the speech, but this is a thing that is worth watching. It was up on CNN. It's easy to get on my blog.
It's easy to get. It's on a lot of
it's all over the place. You could go to YouTube and find it there pretty easily. This was on my blog on September 24th. Should we go on to the next one?
Yeah, we got one coming up here. South Australia plans for 100% renewable energy economy.
This is a 100% renewable hydrogen economy. Anyway.
Yeah. I didn't say hydrogen.
You didn't say hydrogen.
Okay, there's a story there.
Renew economy. This is an interesting story. South Australia, which by the way is governed by the Liberal Party,
which is conservative.
Which is conservative. It's the equivalent of conservative Republican, has outlined plans for a 100% renewable hydrogen economy, saying that with its enormous wind and solar resources, there is nowhere else in the world as well positioned to produce, consume, and export 100% green hydrogen.
Well, a little geography. South Australia is their sort of equivalent of Louisiana.
Yeah.
In location.
In location,
okay?
yeah.
It's about as big as Louisiana, Alabama, and...
I think it's about twice the size of Texas.
I don't think it's quite that big.
Well, it's close. It is big.
It's equal to about 4 of our American states at least.
Okay.
And it's in the south part of Australia, centered about where New Orleans is.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think they have a population of about 2.6 million people.
Well, nowhere in Australia is heavily populated.
That's true, yeah.
So anyhow, they are very well suited to generate electricity, and they don't know what to do with it.
Okay. You can figure it out.
Well, yeah,
they're
going to make hydrogen.
It out. They're going to make hydrogen, and they're going to do things with those hydrogen. That hydrogen, they don't have to export the hydrogen.
No,
they can make the hydrogen into things that they can then export.
Bingo, and they haven't decided which one they're going to do yet.
Well, they're probably going to do both.
It's a win-win situation for them.
I mean, if you have hydrogen, you can make ammonia.
Oh, yeah.
Ammonia is an extremely valuable material. It's very easy to sell.
And it burns.
And it burns, and it can be used for fertilizer, and it's, all kinds of things that you can do. Okay, if we're done with that, then we're up to Wednesday, September 25th.
Well, let's see. We get 10 minutes left, don't we? So
we can chat.
I got a little bit more about that.
I got that rant going, and then we've been tearing through this stuff.
Let me read a little bit more about this one.
Oh, okay, good.
South Australia is already sourcing 50% of its electricity from wind and solar.
Yes.
Already. It's on track to reach 100% renewables before 2030.
Before 2030.
Before 2030.
Right.
They've closed down coal power several years ago. This is a conservative government, by the way.
This is a conservative government.
And have reduced natural gas generation to a relatively minor role. The cost of wind and solar has fallen dramatically, as we know here, and the cost of electrolysis is falling at the same rate.
That's a big deal.
And that's how they make the hydrogen.
That's how you make the
so
hydrogen.
So that renewable hydrogen will be able to compete on cost with brown or gray hydrogen from coal or other fossil fuel sources.
Absolutely.
So they're sitting on a gold mine here.
They are indeed, and they know it. And they were complaining about the contracts that the previous Labor government had signed, saying we're going to pull out of those contracts until they started seeing what the numbers that the contracts were producing
were
having, and then they said, no,
we can't afford to do this.
We're not going to pull out of these things.
we're making it out.
Yeah, absolutely. So now we're up to Wednesday, September 25th.
We got the last one of the show coming up. We got a picture.
That's a picture of a GE
let's
wind
see
turbine.
if I can't get that picture. Yeah, that's a GE. Look at the size of the nacelle.
Yeah, well, it's hard to see what the size of the nacelle is.
Well, there's nothing to gauge it by.
Yeah, that's.
But if that's a 12 megawatt, that's equal to about 9 buses.
Yeah. Okay,
Pretty
this is
big.
from Renews.
From Renews, and it says GE Renewable Energy goes carbon neutral. And by the way, GE Renewable Energy is the name of one of their divisions. Their biggest divisions that makes these things.
Yes, that's right.
Okay.
The wind hydropower energy storage and grid operations business of GE has committed to going 100% carbon neutral by the end of 2020. GE Renewable Energy Chief Executive Jerome Pécresse said, quote, "This is a decision that makes business sense," end quote. Natural Capital Partners will advise GE on the move.
Well, the biggest part of GE Renewable Energy is in France.
Okay.
It's not an American firm. They bought a French company. They bought a Dutch company to make turbine blades.
Right.
They're getting into the business big. I mean, they're not wading in the water.
Absolutely.
They're up to their hips.
Well, they're the ones who are making that huge 12 megawatt turbine.
That is big.
Yeah.
That is big. Of energy efficiency, waste reduction, renewable power sources, plus the purchase of carbon offsets makes all of this economical.
Right.
So we got another one coming up here.
This is from CNN.
Trump is weaponizing the EPA against California. We've touched base on this already.
We have indeed. President Donald Trump continues to make political war on California over the environment. Last week, the Trump administration went after the state for doing too much under the Clean Air Act. That is to say, they were having emissions standards that were too tough.
Too much.
This week, it's alleging that California isn't doing enough under the same law.
Now, from the article, it says, only in Trump's world are both things possible.
Well, I'll tell you something. There's a standard legal thing here that is going to be called into play on this, and that is you cannot argue both sides. You've got to pick your side.
Bingo.
This is going to be a problem for the federal government. And California, well, it's not California alone here. Vermont, I believe, is one of the states.
Oh, yeah, there's a whole bunch of people that are behind California.
Every U.S. state we border on is...
I think it's something. They're up in the 20s already.
24.
Yeah.
Was what I read, but it might be more than that.
Well, there's a video here that's interesting, and the caption is, "Don't listen to what he says, look at what he does."
Yeah.
2.5 minutes. And he mentions, I'm an environmentalist. I'm in favor of clean air, crystal clear water. And then he turns around and does the opposite.
Does the opposite. And another thing that's interesting about this is California can set its own standards. Other states are allowed to follow California's standards.
Well, that's the way it's been up until now.
Yep, and Vermont is one of those states.
One of those other states.
Now, there are a total of 17 states that follow California standards. But there's a total of 24 states that are taking part in the lawsuit.
That's interesting.
Isn't it? It's an interesting thing here that states that are not taking part in the California standard are siding with California.
Well, I think they're looking ahead.
I think they may be, yes.
And from the article, it's about punishing a state that is currently challenging Trump's agenda. Environmental issues remain at the front of the federal-state standoff.
Yes.
So it's about punishment. I mean,
it is about punishment.
Trump doesn't like what California's doing, and he's challenging them.
Yes, and it's everything that Barack Obama did, he's trying to undo.
Yeah, well,
it doesn't matter what it is. He just wants to undo it.
Good or bad, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Well, the last one of the last article brings it back to Vermont, and there is a picture.
There is a picture. There it is.
And I'll bring the picture up. And that is the town of Panton, which is up near Middlebury.
Okay.
Okay, and that's apparently is Mount Mansfield in the background.
Yes.
It's about 30 miles northeast of Panton.
Okay.
And in the renewable energy credit market, some are greener than others.
Well, this is from vtdigger.org. Vermont's energy may not seem to be as green as it seems. And you know, this is an interesting fact because I get different estimates of how green our energy is, and this explains why.
Well, part of it is how they define green energy.
It is.
I mean, Green Mountain Power is saying that Hydro-Quebec is green energy.
Yes.
And I think it is.
I think it is too.
But they're saying it isn't, or these guys are saying
well,
it isn't.
There's a controversy here, and I'm not sure. I think it's worthwhile paying attention to the controversy, but let me finish reading
Yeah,
this.
finish reading it.
Representative Sarah Copeland Hanses, who is a Democrat from Bradford, said the Vermont Climate Solutions Caucus, which she vice chairs, will push to update the state's renewable energy standard to require more in-state generation.
That's certainly possible.
It's an important distinction because from an environmental point of view, you know, even if you accept the idea that Vermont is 90% renewable now in its electric generation, if we have more in-state generation, that means that we're going to be buying less out-of-state energy.
And out of the country.
And out of the country. That means that we would be taking less energy from Hydro-Quebec. But who is Hydro-Quebec going? What are they going to do with that energy if Vermont isn't taking it?
No, they'll sell it to Boston.
They'll sell it to Boston. They'll sell it to Providence, Rhode Island. They'll sell it to Chicago, for crying out loud. We're at a point now where DC power can be transmitted. Well,
pretty far.
Pretty far.
Damn far.
Yeah. I looked this up several years ago, and in 1986 there was I think it was a 9.5% loss in electric power over a 1,000-mile distance.
That must have been AC.
That was AC.
Yeah.
Now, in 1995, the distance with well, in 1985, the maximum range that you could sell electricity and make money was 2,500 miles.
Okay.
In 1995, it was 4,000 miles.
Okay.
But now we've got this new electronic stuff where we can go to DC power and we can move this stuff with DC
without the AC losses.
Without the AC. And this means that you use less copper.
There almost isn't any limit.
Almost none. You could manufacture power in Canada and sell it in Tierra del Fuego.
Yes. Yes.
You know, you could
manufacture exactly
if you had the electric lines in place, you could make it anywhere else, anywhere on Earth, and sell it anywhere on Earth. If you had those lines, DC power lines, in place, and the line loss is really negligible.
Almost none.
Yeah, it's getting to be negligible, and but in state, if we're going to do this in state, Hydro-Quebec is going to sell that power elsewhere. And what's it?
It's not going to hurt Hydro-Quebec any.
No. What are they going to? What are they going to replace? Coal, natural gas, nuclear. That's basically what it comes to. That's what they're going to replace.
And we have a lot of opportunities here in Vermont.
We have a lot of
little rivers where, you know, they could put in small hydro. They've got all these flood control dams up and down the Connecticut River.
That's right.
They have started generating power in Townsend.
In Townsend.
Okay, so
other places.
It's very doable. It doesn't interfere with their function as flood control.
That's right.
Okay.
And we've got lots of opportunities.
And there must be a dozen of them.
Yeah. We have lots of opportunities, but we've got no time left.
Well.
So maybe what we should do is say, have a perfectly lovely week, folks.
Well, we got 6 seconds left, so
You're not up.
I'm not even up here.
Better
I'm
put
going to
both
try and
of
put
us
us
up.
up
There
so I
we
can
go.
wave.
Yeah. No, we're still not there.
There
we
we
go. See you
Good
next
night,
time.
bye. Good night, guys.